Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'm sorry if my technology was giving me a little bit of fits, but I'm glad everybody that's in the show is actually in the show. So far, we got a couple people in stream. I'm glad for those that showed up. I'm sorry that I've been away for so long, but with that having been said, let's dive into the show. So, as I said, I've been gone for about a week or so. I had something I had to take care of last Saturday where I couldn't get in to do the show, so I do apologize for that. But with today's show, we got a couple things worth talking about. Nothing too serious as far as like major news, unless you go with rumors per se. But there's significant rumors and there's significant weight to those rumors. So let's just talk about what we have on the docket today. So, first and foremost, we have the talking of potentially gaining a new player in Detroit. We have the talking of losing an old nemesis that the Detroit Lions face. And we also have to talk about the potential of the Lions re-signing a player of extreme noteworthiness as far as on our roster already. With that being said, we'll just kind of go down the list and go down in order. So the first thing we're going to talk about is probably the most significant news right now. Again, with it being the off season, it's a little dry, so to speak, as far as news that's content worthy, that's relevant, and stuff that people are interested in. That news is this. According to reports that have come out, there are rumors that are circulating that right now, the main one is that Amon-Ra St. Brown is making a huge push to try and get Jalen Ramsey to come join the Detroit Lions. Now, here's the thing. This rumor definitely has something to it as far as being a substantial rumor because of the fact that, well, let's understand something here. Where the Rams are right now, as far as their roster is concerned, as far as cap space, as far as the fact that they're still trying to compete, as far as also considering the situation of the fact that, Jalen Ramsey is a bit on the older side of corners, there's at least something to build upon this rumor as far as from a logical perspective, because it kind of actually makes sense for the Lions. Let's break this down just a little bit here. When we take a look at the Lions right now, what does everybody in the NFL view the Lions as right now, right this very minute? They view them as a team that's on the up and coming. They view them as a team that has the potential to, even next year or the year after next, cause some serious noise in terms of being able to compete for playoff spots, win a playoff game, maybe even make a push for a championship. Who knows? I know that people have paid attention to the report that the Lions, I believe, have the highest NFC Super Bowl odds, or the second highest NFC Super Bowl odds, one or the other for next year. So there's that. And when you consider the fact that the Rams are a team that is getting older, they don't have substantial draft stock as far as to replace certain players. And as far as I recall, they're over the cap right now. But again, the cap is kind of a very loose figure, because that number can get moved around so very, very easily. But think about it this way. Isn't Jalen Ramsey like 28, 29 years old? You have to think of the fact that the Rams not having enough draft capital to restock their roster shelves, they're going to need some sort of draft capital to, kind of jumpstart things. Well, it's quite obvious that the Rams are not going to trade away a player like Aaron Donald. It's just not going to happen. Aaron Donald, by far, is their best player on both offense or defense, outside of maybe Cooper Kupp. And realistically, you then have to kind of go down the laundry list of players that have overbloated contracts that the Rams can get rid of. Well, the first name that pops up to my mind is Jalen Ramsey. First and foremost, as far as I know, he's got 3 or 2 years left on his contract. As I said, he's nearing the 30-year mark as far as a corner is concerned. And again, the Rams are most likely going to want to get something to add to their draft class in terms of adding extra draft picks. Trading Jalen Ramsey makes sense because there are obviously going to be a bevy of teams that are going to be interested in his services. And obviously the rumor is that the Lions are heavily trying to get him to come to Detroit. As I stated, Amon-Ra St. Brown is already actively trying to get him to want to come to Detroit. And for me, it makes sense because let's also think of the perspective of who's on the Lions roster, or just rather, I should say, who's with the Lions organization. You've got Jared Goff, who is the former quarterback of the Rams. You've got Michael Brockers, who is also a defensive lineman of the Rams. And you've got by far the biggest bargaining chip in this whole equation. You have Brad Holmes, who used to work under Les Snead, who was very much responsible for a lot of the players that the Rams drafted while he was there. You've got a lot of former Rams players, former Rams organizational pieces that have connections with these different players. And obviously there's relationships that have already been built. There's obviously connections. There's rapport that's already been built. So for me, it makes sense that the Lions are obviously, or rather I should say in this case, not the Lions, because this is not an official sanctioning, so to speak. It would make sense why players like Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's also reports that Jared Goff is in this. Michael Brockers, like I said, could also be in this. It makes sense that you have these players that are trying to get Jalen Ramsey to come to Detroit, because you also have to think of it from this last perspective here. The Lions are in desperate need of cornerback help, not just in the draft as far as getting a talented young player. They are also in need of finding a veteran, savvy cornerback who can teach players like Jeff Okudah or potentially another cornerback the Lions might potentially want to go after in the draft. The point of the matter is that trading for Jalen Ramsey, if that's the way it goes, or if the Rams decide to cut him and it's a salary cap casualty, one way or the other, by laying the groundwork to try and persuade Jalen Ramsey to want to come to Detroit, it makes total sense because of the personnel that's already here in Detroit that has ties to the Rams, a.k.a. Goff, Brockers, Brad Holmes, but it also fills a need for the Lions in finding a veteran player in the cornerback room that can help grow those young cornerbacks, whether we draft one or we work with Jeff Okudah, whichever the case is, or both. So for me, from the perspective of both the Lions and the Rams, this move, this rumor, it actually has some logic to it. It actually has some sense. So for me, I actually am thinking that if it were to actually happen, there's actually a good chance it could happen. I'm not saying it will. I'm not even guaranteeing it will. I'm just simply saying there is a good possibility based upon the logic of the situation, based upon the reports, the rumors that we're already hearing about Goff, St. Brown. They're trying to get him to want to come to Detroit. Again, these are just rumors. It's nothing official, so to speak. But again, we have heard the rumors, and from what I am understanding, what got St. Brown into this is because on his podcast with his brother, apparently he made that announcement that he's been actively trying to make that work. The point of the matter is that when we're talking about what Jalen Ramsey could do for the Lions, there's a lot of things, even in 2 or 3 years of what he could potentially have left as an elite all-star cornerback, that he could do for the Lions to help propel them, so to speak, to that next level. So I just want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think? Do you think trading for Jalen Ramsey is a smart idea? Do you guys want to make that trade? Do you think the Lions would benefit from that trade? I'm just curious because honestly, I'm not going to say that I'm against the idea. I'm very much for it, but I'm more on the fence for it because again, even if we trade or acquire Jalen Ramsey, we're only going to get a couple of years out of him before we have to start asking ourselves the question, how effective is he going to be because of his age? Because again, I think he's up in his upper 20s, which means he's not very far removed from that 30-year mark. But again, I understand the talent that Jalen Ramsey possesses. I understand that it would instantaneously help this Lions defense, especially the passing defense. So for me, I can't deny that the trade makes sense. I can't deny that the trade has logic, and I can't deny that the trade would not help the Lions, which in my experience, when you've got all those things going for you and you have at least a little bit of substantial verifiable information, there's something to work with there. So for me, I kind of dig it. I'm kind of all for it, but I'd like to see what you guys have to say. And with that being said, we're going to take a look at some of the comments in today. First comment we have is from somebody named Elijah Hanna. Says, like button is smashed. What up, chat? Love the channel. Absolutely. Thank you, Elijah. Calvin Little says, do you think Ramsey will actually go to Detroit? I think he will go to Minnesota. I think there's a chance simply because of the connection that Jalen Ramsey has with these former players and also with Brad Holmes here in Detroit. Again, we have to understand something here. Even though the NFL is not quite like the NBA right now, it's getting to that way with people actively trying to get people to come to other teams. Again, perfect example. If you watch those Pro Bowl videos, the Pro Bowl highlights, the Pro Bowl mic'd up videos, there are moments where you can clearly see players, they are talking amongst one another, and they are trying to actively bring players that they already know that are on their last year of their contracts. They're possibly thinking about going into free agency, like, hey, man, you should come over here. You would be a great fit with the team. I think you'd like it, blah, 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 blah. The NFL is very much becoming more and more what the NBA is as far as, hey, I got this guy's digits. I think he'd be a good fit. We're good pals. We're good buddies. Let's bring him in. The NFL is not quite there yet, but the fact that it's getting there, and like I said, the fact that the Lions have Goff, Brockers, Brad Holmes, Amon-Ra St. Brown is actively already trying to bring him in, I think that there's a little bit more going towards the fact that the Lions have an upper hand or the inside track because of those relationships. Plus, I also have to question how good is the Minnesota Vikings team actually. I get it, they went 13-4, but I'm just going to say it right now. The Minnesota Vikings were probably the most fraudulent team in the entire NFL last year, outside of maybe the Dallas Cowboys. They were a team that had a great record, but they had a quarterback that was in top 5 for interceptions in the league. They had a negative point differential, and you could clearly tell that there were times that they won by pure luck alone. So for me, I don't really see the Vikings as somebody that Jalen Ramsey is going to want to go to. If he's going to go somewhere, he wants to go somewhere that actually has a legitimate shot of competing. And when you take a look at the NFC North, the clear competitor in that division, in our division, it's not the Packers. It's not the Bears. It's not the Vikings. It's the Lions. The Lions actually have the best competitive edge in the NFC North right now. That's not me being a homer. You take a look at those other 3 teams, Vikings, Bears, Packers. The Lions have the best competitive roster as being able to go in, win consistently, and win in a convincing fashion. So that's why I think Jalen Ramsey winds up more in Detroit than Minnesota. Gary then comes in and says, it would be amazing if each club won a Super Bowl. Talk about a win-win. You got a point there. I understand where you're going with that. Casey says, no, build through the draft, hire competent coaches. You don't need a self-serving, overpaid veteran to lead or coach young players. That is a very valid point. And again, I understand why some Lions fans have that viewpoint, because I myself have had that viewpoint at one point. But I can also say this right now. I also know that Jalen Ramsey had how should I dare put this without it getting too wild? He had a personal open public grudge or vendetta, I should say, or at the very least, he just had a negative connotation towards Jared Goff after he left, because literally no sooner had that trade happened between the Lions and the Rams for Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford and those bevy of picks, Jalen Ramsey's out there pretty much throwing shade on Jared Goff. And it's like, I don't know if that would have an awkward dynamic. Apparently, it doesn't seem like Jared Goff is too fazed by it because he seems to have moved on from it. But it's just one of those things to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But the only reason I bring that up is because, like you said, the self-serving, overpaid, overconfident, I get that. I understand where that vibe is coming from when it comes to Jalen Ramsey. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it 100%. I'm just simply saying I can understand where that vibe comes from. Chuck Osborne says that Jalen Ramsey is 28. Gary says, so many draftable corners, keep the youth movement. Again, like I said, on my private channel, Detroit Lions Forum, where I do my own private videos, I've talked about the young cornerbacks, and I'm telling you this right now. I said it on that channel, and I'm going to say it on this channel briefly. The best corner in this draft, in my opinion, and that the one that the Lions should go after, if they're going to draft a corner in the first round, is Christian Gonzalez. Draft Christian Gonzalez. He is a perfect fit for what this Lions defense needs right now. Excellent man coverage, excellent size, willing, enthusiastic tackler. That's what you need from a cornerback right now. You need a guy that can cover. You need a guy that can tackle. You need a guy that has got the size to play on the outside. Christian Gonzalez checks all 3 of those boxes. Draft this dude. Casey says Ramsey's stats are going downhill for the last few years. He's overrated. He'd be overpaid and a culture cancer. He's not a kneecap biter. Fair point. I can understand that. Chuck Osborne says, I'm worried about the money for his and what his price tag would be. Well, you got to understand something here. A player of Jalen Ramsey's caliber, if not even if the skills there at the same time right now, you have to consider just the name recognition. Again, think about it this way, folks. How much money did Russell Wilson command when he went to the Denver Broncos? And now it looks like the Broncos have signed themselves to this god-awful albatross of a contract that they can't possibly get out of. And it looks like the only thing that they were signing themselves up for with Russell Wilson was his name, because the talent clearly was not there last year. Now, some people are going to say that could have been because of Nathaniel Hackett. That could have been because he was changing over to a new team, a new culture, a new system, whatever have you. But the point of the matter is Russell Wilson's been going at this for a long, long time. He knows what he needs to do as a quarterback. I think more you just have to take a look at the fact that the Broncos got suckered into his name, and now they're going to have to pay for it for a decent amount of time, which is an argument I can see why some Lions fans would have against taking Jalen Ramsey, because you wonder if you're going to actually get the same statistical production or if you're just paying for the name recognition that Jalen Ramsey has. Let's see here. Casey says to Gary, exactly, draft class is deep for defensive backs, can be had in the second round, best D player available in the first, preferably D-line. I've stated this as well. So with that being said, I think I've pretty sufficiently talked about Jalen Ramsey possibly becoming a Lion. Obviously, there are some people that are for it, some people that are not. There's never, well, can't say never. There's almost never a situation where everybody is going to agree on a certain point, especially when it comes to the topic of sports, especially football. But it was worth a shot anyway. Pretty interesting topic, pretty interesting rumor. Now, with that having been said, let's move from one particular player that the Lions could sign or trade for in terms of Jalen Ramsey, and let's turn to a player, a nemesis, I should say, that the Lions could potentially look forward to losing to have to play twice every year. Aaron frickin' Rodgers. I would say something else, but I'm trying to keep this show PG. Anyway, let's just talk about Aaron Rodgers here for a minute. So if y'all haven't been paying attention to the news, which I find highly irregular because almost everybody in terms of just modern day Americans just pays attention to the smallest bits of news because, well, just think about it. We've got everything we could possibly need as far as internet access on a smartphone. So it'd be almost impossible if you keep track of the NFL not to know about Aaron Rodgers and him potentially leaving the Green Bay Packers. Well, here's the thing. Right now, at least according to the reports, Aaron Rodgers either is getting ready to or is in the process of going on a 4-day retreat where he is having himself locked up, so to speak, in a room where it's in complete darkness so he can reflect on what is best for his career, best for his life, so on and so forth. Not going to really get into the whole personal belief and knocking or dogging him for that because you know what? He's going to do what he's going to do. I respect everybody's beliefs to whatever they are. Just going to leave it at that. However, though, there is the report that the Packers are willing, they are open to the idea of being and wanting to trade Aaron Rodgers away. This is a massive development, even though this is a couple of days old. This is a massive development because of one simple reason. This is the first time that the Packers have ever made it abundantly known that they are willing and open to trading Aaron Rodgers. Not that they're just going to give him away for nothing necessarily, but they're actually willing to take phone calls and actually willing to say, hey, we're actually open to the prospect of trading. Let's hear what you got to offer. Now, let's just call it for what it is here. When you're talking about quarterbacks and being traded in the NFL, you have to kind of start and you have to kind of go back to Jared Goff for this one because think about it. When you take a look at the Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade, that was a blockbuster trade at the time that it happened. In essence, the Rams were giving up a quarterback, the Lions were giving up a quarterback, and the Rams were giving up a couple of draft picks to get said quarterback to go along with it. Ever since that trade happened, you've had other quarterbacks that have been traded, but nowhere near for as much as what Goff and Stafford went down for. Then you get to the Deshaun Watson trade. There's that one. Can't forget about Deshaun Watson and his trade. And you also get to the Russell Wilson trade that I was just talking about. Well, if you take a look at every single one of those quarterbacks, Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, what do all three of those guys have in common? It's not necessarily a skill talent because one of them hasn't played in 2 years and one of them just had a terrible year, but I jest. The true meaning of what they all have in common is when they got traded away from their prospective team to a new team, the team that traded for them had to give up, except for the Lions, the team that had to get them had to give up a lot of talent in order to make it work. The Lions were fortunate in the fact that when they traded Stafford away, they didn't have to trade anything else. They literally didn't have to trade anything else. They literally got Stafford in the deal to trade away and got in return 2 firsts, a third, and Jared Goff. But if you take a look at the trade compensation packages that the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos, man, I don't know how that came into my mind, but I digress. The Denver Broncos had to give up to get Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. The Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade looks like an absolute steal of a deal for the Lions. Well, now we take a look at the potential of Aaron Rodgers being traded from the Packers. Well, think about it this way, folks. As much as I personally dislike Aaron Rodgers, I cannot deny the guy's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I can't. I respect his game too much, even though I don't like him personally as a player. I respect the man's game. Here's the thing. If you think about it from that perspective, if Jared Goff was traded for 2 firsts and a third, and then Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson were traded for all of the draft picks that they had, how much do you honestly think it's going to cost for Aaron Rodgers to get traded? You're talking about a substantial trade package. But there's obviously rumors of what that trade package would be. It would be 2 first-round draft picks. Well, again, the rumor states that there's one team that has already reached out stating they are interested in trading for Aaron Rodgers, and that would be the New York Jets. Now, this is kind of odd because if you think about it, the New York Jets actually kind of fit for what Aaron Rodgers is in essence looking for. He's looking for a team that can win now and can potentially make a Super Bowl run. Well, here's the thing. The Jets have themselves that kind of a defense. They have a defense that can compete with just about anybody. It's a very talented, very ferocious defense. What's the one thing the Jets don't have? They don't have a quarterback. Mike White is not their quarterback of the future. And as much as they want to say that they want to keep Zach Wilson to develop to become their quarterback of the future, he ain't it either. So instead, you have the Jets that are willing to give up 2 first-round draft picks to potentially go and get Aaron Rodgers. Well, here's the thing. It makes sense except for one teeny little fine factor. Man, I can't talk today. That little fine factor is the no trade clause that's in Aaron Rodgers' contract. In order for Aaron Rodgers to be traded, he has to agree to the fact of being traded to that team, which means, in essence, let's just say hypothetically, the Jets and the Packers were able to come up with a trade package, and they had worked out all the deals, and they said, hey, we'll give you for this, we'll give you that for that, and we'll call it a day. Unless Aaron Rodgers is actually willing to sign off on the trade, it cannot happen. So Aaron Rodgers being the, what's the word I'd use for him? Obstinate, stubborn individual that he is, unless he is personally willing to go to that team, this whole conversation is moot. But the point of the matter is that for any team to actually even start this whole conversation, they have to publicly express that they are willing to make that trade. So far, the only team that has been willing to say that they're wanting to make that trade, potentially to go and get Aaron Rodgers, is the Jets. Now, how does this affect the Lions? Well, the reason it affects the Lions is because could you imagine a year where we don't have to play Aaron Rodgers twice? Could you imagine an NFC North where it's like, dude, not only is it wide open, it is ripe for the taking. It is the Wild West. And the Lions, they are literally the Cowboys. I'm talking about in the movie The Tombstone, where they're just literally pillaging and they are just taking everything in their path. And the point of the matter is that There's nobody in the NFC North right this moment that could stop the Lions if Aaron Rodgers were to leave. Aaron Rodgers is by far the last kind of, check in the NFC North as being able to stop other teams from taking over. Because think about it this way. Even with an offense that didn't have a true number one wide receiver for the majority of the year, Aaron Rodgers was still able to keep that Packers team roughly around 500. You take Aaron Rodgers out of that equation, you're talking about a team that's barely winning 4 games. That's just my honest opinion. So in my opinion, Aaron Rodgers kind of keeps things in check per se in the NFC North. Without him around, pretty much it comes down to the Lions and the Vikings being able to rule the North. And in my opinion, I like the Lions having that ability much better than the Vikings. Just saying. But that's my whole point. By trading away a potential nemesis and Aaron Rodgers to a team like the Jets, it opens up that wide open NFC North playoff race next year even wider. Because now we all know the Bears aren't going to do anything next year. They still have too many holes. They might have a lot of resources, but they still have too many holes. So realistically, if Aaron Rodgers leaves, the race is pretty much down to the Lions and the Vikings making the race to the number one spot in the NFC North. And that's because Aaron Rodgers isn't there anymore. But some people are going to say, you want to play the best competition to feel like you've earned the win. Well, here's the thing. I don't really care because I don't like Aaron Rodgers that much. I would much rather not have him in the NFC North so that way I don't have to deal with him and listen to, we beat ourselves. That team wasn't all that good. And, it's like, dude, we beat you twice this year, and our defense literally made you look ridiculous. So for me, it's like, listen, I don't really care anymore, but I'm past Aaron Rodgers. I know he's going to go into the Hall of Fame, but if I never have to play him again as a Lions fan, it'd be too soon. Like, that's how much I just despise Aaron Rodgers. I would much rather watch him leave the division, go somewhere else, so I wouldn't have to deal with him anymore, rather than face him every year, twice a year, and potentially get a better outcome because, hey, we beat Aaron Rodgers. It'd be like, nah, I just like to pumble on some people at this point. But I'm sure everyone's going to have their differing of opinions, which is why we'll now go to the comments really quickly. Let's see here. We got ourselves a couple of comments here. Joseph Murdoch says, hard pass on Ramsey. They can get secondary help in the draft, which is what a lot of people have said from the previous segment. Gary thinks that Aaron Rodgers might be going to Las Vegas to join his previous friend and previous star wide receiver, Devontae Adams, which there is definitely some validity to that idea, especially because of the previous connection that those two already have. Plus, you have to consider the fact that the Raiders just picked up a massive amount of cap space because they released Derek Carr. They have the weaponry that would entice Aaron Rodgers with Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller. They've got the talent that he would be requiring to go out there and play. And if you technically believe the rumors or believe the thought process about Josh McDaniels, he's considered an offensive guru. So for Aaron Rodgers, he'd have everything that he's looking for, except for the fact that he'd be trading into probably the most difficult, most competitive division in all of football, and that being the AFC West. Because then he'd have to compete with the likes of Justin Herbert and the Chargers. He'd have to compete with the likes of Russell Wilson and the Broncos and Sean Payton now. And also, obviously, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I don't know if he'd be willing to trade into one of the most difficult divisions of the NFL. I think trading into the Jets and the AFC East would make a lot more sense because the only real competitor out in the AFC East is realistically the Bills. So for me, if I'm looking for the most easiest path or the best path, I should say, to make it to the postseason, if you're going based off of talent, I would say the Raiders. If you're going based off of the easiness of the path as far as who you've got to play more, I'd say the Jets. But we'll see what happens. Elijah Hanna says, I really think Fields and Okudah was talking about Okudah going to Chicago the last game we played. Chicago, because Okudah knows his days are numbered. Okay. I don't know about that. Again, there's no... How should I dare say it? There's no report out there that says specifically that Okudah's days are numbered in Detroit. The best that we know for the fact is that his fifth-year option needs to be picked up. If it's not picked up, he's going to play one more year here in Detroit before he becomes a free agent. So if nothing else, we've got him for one more year. So talks about him going to Chicago for this year are pretty much moot because it's not going to happen unless he gets traded. And I don't see the Lions trading him away. Casey says Aaron Rodgers is an albatross around the neck of the Green Bay Packers. He stays and his fading skills won't dominate. He leaves. He scorches Green Bay's cap dollars. Lose for the Packers. I mean, it is a lose for the Packers because of the simple point of the matter is that the Packers for the last, I don't even know what, like 2-3 years, they have been catering to every single whim that Aaron Rodgers had. And in the end, all he pretty much got out of the deal was more money. He's not won any more championships. He's gotten to championship games and lost. And he hasn't played at that same MVP caliber level for the last, what was it? I think he missed last year as the MVP, and the year before that he actually did make it. I could be wrong. I don't care. But the point of the matter is that this year he looked like a shell of the former quarterback that we normally am used to seeing. So that is a bit concerning, especially with the fact that he's about to hit 40 years old. So for me, it's like, I'm not really all that scared by Aaron Rodgers anymore, but it's like, listen, I know it would make the Lions' lives a lot easier if he just simply wasn't in the division anymore. Joseph Murdoch says Karen Rodgers can go kick a rock or kick rocks, as I also like to say. Ice Baby Nard apparently likes my my mix-up of terms for Denver Broncos being Denver Buccaneers. Yeah, that was a complete and total accident. I did not script that at all. I don't know where that came from. That just came right out of my mouth, and I was like, man, that just hits the tongue wrong. Oh, boy. Casey says, I'd enjoy another year of Rodgers in Green Bay and the Lions sweeping the Packers. Listen, let's just call it for what it is, Casey. It doesn't matter if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback or not. While it does add a little bit of flavor to it, it adds a little bit more excitement and enticing factor to it. The Lions sweep the Packers twice a year, and it's Aaron Rodgers or not, doesn't matter because we absolutely detest the Packers. So winning against them twice every year, regardless of who the quarterback, is an absolute must. Joseph Murdoch says it's right for the taking with or without Rodgers in Green Bay. He's a jerk, and the Lions are the better team. Okay, fair enough. Chuck Osborne says that he despises Aaron Rodgers too. Duke of Games 50 says, including the 3 sweep seasons for us two for Green Bay. D777 Max says Aaron Rodgers is going to finish his career with the Packers. I do believe rumors are rumors, and we have to deal with them with a grain of salt. Have to go. Take care, David, and you all. Absolutely. Thank you for tuning into the show, DC. And there's a point. Rumors are rumors. You have to kind of take them with a little bit of a pinch, a little bit of a grain of salt to kind of be like, there might be some chance that this isn't the case. But the point of the matter is that the Packers are potentially open and willing to trade Rodgers away. The Jets have confirmed, they have stated that they are willing to pay the Packers offering price. At this point, the only thing that remains is if Aaron Rodgers actually wants to go and play for the Jets. That's all that remains. Let's see here. Shoimer TT says, I'm from Las Vegas. The Raiders stink. I wish they would move back to Oakland where they belong. I was born in Michigan, and I will always be a Lions fan. Well, thank you to hear that, man. Joseph Murdoch says, I want Karen to stay in Green Bay. I'll just enjoy watching him get pummeled when the Lions play him. Yeah, that's always fun, watching Aaron Rodgers have his hissy fits, especially when he's playing against the Lions. But, say la vie. Excuse me. Oh, I had you on there. Hatter's House 710 says, I can tolerate Rodgers as a human, but as a football player, I despise him. Fair enough, Hatter's House. Fair enough. Duke of Games 50 says, apparently our first year with Matt Patricia was a trash year for Green Bay, and we swept them that season, including a 31-0 season ender. Okay. I mean, either way, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter who's the quarterback. So long as we beat them twice a year, I'm happy. And that's for either team. Okay, now, let's get into the last topic of today's show. So today's show is not going to run nearly as long because I've got some other things I got to take care of. But we're going to get through this topic. And this is a topic that's really, really going to be, I'm pretty confident, a debate setter for some people because of the fact that we're still dealing with a player that's on the Lions, a player that some fans are not particularly enthralled still with. That's Jared Goff. Now, I've talked about Jared Goff a lot. Everybody that's in this show knows that. But I haven't really talked about Jared Goff in the sense of, hey, what exactly could he possibly command in terms of a contract? I've talked about it briefly in one episode on my private channel, but that's about it. So why am I bringing it up now? Why am I talking about Jared Goff and a possibility of a contract extension? Well, the reason why is because we have to take a look at what's going on around the NFL right now. And here's why I'm bringing this up. If you go to another quarterback in the NFL, Daniel Jones. Now, there was a report that was just released the other day that if Daniel Jones gets a contract extension, which apparently he and his representatives are searching for, because after all, he didn't get his fifth-year option picked up from the Giants, as far as I remember. Either way, the point of the matter is that he's looking for a new contract. Well, the report is that if Daniel Jones gets a new contract, it's expected to be anywhere around $35 million a year. Now, this number is particularly intriguing because we have to think about this from Jared Goff's perspective. Jared Goff right now is making on average about $31 to $32 million a year if you break down the numbers, do the averages, so on and so forth. The point of the matter is that Daniel Jones at best throughout the entirety of his career has been pretty much has been a non-factor, irrelevant. I know they call him Danny Dimes, but it's like, listen, up until this year, there was nothing about his throws that were considered dimes by any stretch of the imagination. The point of the matter is that you're talking about a guy called Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes. He is in line for getting paid $35 million a year. Well, Jared Goff right now pretty much almost makes that. Well, here's the thing. A lot of Lions fans now have gotten on the bandwagon. They've gotten on the idea. They've supported the idea, the notion that Jared Goff is going to be the quarterback going forward. Something that I fought for forever and a day. And I'm glad that we finally gotten that whole situation, taken care of. And most people are on the same page now. But here's the thing. When we are talking about this in terms of Jared Goff, you have to think about it. Like I said, Jared Goff is getting paid roughly around the same amount as what Daniel Jones would be expected to make from a new contract. Well, wait a minute here. Jared Goff has 2 years left, right? Obviously, everyone knows that. But here's the problem. If Jared Goff has 2 years left, that means more likely than not, he's going to need a new contract here very shortly. Well, here's the thing. If Daniel Jones can command $35 million with his, at best, subpar to average performances over the last couple of years, and this one was above average, but not by much, imagine how much money Jared Goff would command. Again, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I don't think Jared Goff is truly in it for the money. I think he wants to win more than anything else. But at the same time, you have to realize that these players want to get paid. They want to have job security. And what's the best way to get that? Long contracts and having a substantial amount of guaranteed money on the books to where the team does not have the reason or the compelling to drop you to cut you at the drop of a hat. So for me, Jared Goff getting a contract extension, if I'm the Lions, I'm not going to wait too long on that one. They need to take care of it sooner rather than later, so that way Goff's asking price does not continue to go up. I honestly think if they're going to sign Goff to a contract, in my opinion, I think they would probably go around maybe the 40 to 42 yard mark as far as millions. Because think about it this way. Most of the top quarterbacks in the league are getting paid around that $50 to $45 million a year scale. There's a couple that are at 40, but either way, the point of the matter is my analogy fits here because Goff getting paid $40 to $42 million means he gets a slight raise over what he's been normally getting, about a $6 to $7 million a year raise, which in my opinion, considering what Jared Goff has done in his very short career, that's not that big of a problem. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's been to 3 NFL Pro Bowls. He holds Lions passing records. He holds NFL passing records. I mean, the dude has accomplished quite a bit in his young career. So for me, I don't see a problem with him getting paid that amount of money because we have to understand here, the market for quarterbacks is going substantially up with every single new big-time contract that gets signed. It went up when Matthew Stafford was the guy. He was at one point not only the most highly paid quarterback in the league, He was the most highly paid player in the league. And ever since then, the number just keeps going up for quarterback contracts. Doesn't matter if it's Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. It doesn't matter. These guys are getting paid buku top dollars where they're making like almost $45 to $50 million a year. And we're talking about $40 million. Maybe if Jared Goff is, being nice about it, and not Jared Goff. Yeah, actually it is Jared Goff. If Jared Goff being nice about it, Jared Goff might take even less money than that because, like he said, he wants to win. He wants to stay in Detroit. He wants to bring players to Detroit. It's obvious Jared Goff knows how to build a team. You take less money. So in my opinion, it would not surprise me, as I've said before, and I'll say it again. I think Jared Goff will probably give Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions a hometown discount, so to speak, take less money so that way they can bring in more talent. And so that way they can also extend out the cap hit to release more said salary cap to bring in said talent. That's just my thoughts on the matter. Because in my opinion, I do not think Daniel Jones is worth $35 million. I'm sorry. I just don't think he's worth it. I think at best you're looking at him as about a $15 to $20 million a year guy. Because that's about what he provides as a player. Not even as a pocket passer, just as a player because he can both run and pass. But if you take a look at what Goff provides, he is such a good passer when he's on his game that he is, I get it. I know some people don't like me saying it, but I'm going to say it anyway. When Goff is on his game, which is more often than not, he's a top 5 passer. He's a top 5 passer, in my opinion. The stats, you take a look at them this year, he finished as a top 10 in almost every statistical category and finished top 5 in some others. So for me, he is right there on the brink of either being top 5 or being in the top 5. The point of the matter is that when I take a look at what Daniel Jones is potentially going to get offered, that is something that gives me a pause for concern, and it definitely, it gives me some anxiety as far as getting Jared Goff a new contract, if especially he's supposed to be the guy going forward, which Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have said that he is. So for me, I think it'd be more prudent that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell give him a new contract, which, again, you go back to the history of Matthew Stafford. When Stafford got his 2 contract extensions through the Lions, they both happened in the summer, and that being in July and August when he both signed those contracts, which means if the Lions do potentially sign Goff to a contract extension, it'd probably be around the time that training camp starts, which is perfect because it means, hey, the contract negotiations are out of the way. There's no distractions. We can go straight into training camp. Nothing to worry about. Not saying that it'll happen, but that would be the prime position to do it because it's happened before. But I'd like to hear what you guys all have to say on it. Obviously, for those that are in stream right now, give me your guys' thoughts before I close the show. I'm going to take a look at them, kind of give some of my thoughts back to your guys' comments. And obviously, for those that come in post-stream, I'd also like to hear your guys' thoughts on it in the comment section. Make sure you drop some comments. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you drop a subscription. Would definitely appreciate it. Now, let's take a look at some of these comments here really quickly. Shamor TT says, right now, Goff is on a hot streak. Hot streaks end. It never hurts to have a good backup in the bullpen. It never hurts, but at the same time, finding good backups is almost as problematic as finding good starters. It's just trying to find a backup that's not going to upset the balance, but at the same time, be competent enough if the quarterback goes down, blah, 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 blah. It's very, very difficult to find a backup quarterback that can embody all of that without upsetting the balance. It really is. Chuck Osborne says Goff is the quarterback for the Lions, of which I totally agree. Duke of Games 50 thinks that Goff is in the 42 mil to 47 mil range. Is that, to be fair? That's a little bit on the high side for me, but that is technically fair based upon what he provides. But again, I don't think Goff takes that much money. Duke of Games 50 says, cough, cough, Lamar Jackson. Yeah, I get where you're going with that, Duke, but Lamar Jackson hasn't officially signed that contract. Once he does, then I can include him in there. But I understand what you're saying. He's looking for a $260 million contract, and he's wanting the majority of it paid guaranteed. So it's like, dude, you're just reckoning for trouble because there ain't no way you're worth that amount of money. Joseph Murdoch says Holmes will find a qualified QB to add to the room, most likely, in my opinion, a UDFA, and won't use a draft pick in the draft. However, I did see them using a pick up for a kicker, and I want Moody. Yeah, that's possible. I would like Jake Moody myself. I think he'd be a good fit here. Shamor says if Matthew Stafford would have had the offense the likes that they have now, he would have looked like a superstar. Again, as the saying goes, coulda, shoulda, woulda. It'd be nice, but unfortunately, that's just not the reality of the situation. But I see the point you're making. Bobby Bottles says Jared Goff can get paid like he's supposed to as long as the contract has more years on it. Again, I'm telling you this right now. Jared Goff is in the prime position to be able to make a deal with a contract because at 28, he's technically entering his prime. He's going to be in his prime for at least the next 5 to 7 years before you have to worry about him not being in his prime. So for me, if you sign Goff to a contract right now, you ensure you keep him the entire time that he's in his prime, which means he's going to be playing his best football. You build the team around Jared Goff, and you have your best chance of success. Just my opinions. Joseph Murdoch says, enjoy your weekends, folks. I definitely appreciate it. Chuck Osborne says, Dave, you better contact the Detroit Lions and tell them they need to now renew Goff's contract. Well, here's the thing. Apparently, again, according to some rumors that I've heard, again, nothing substantiated, but the rumor is that Goff and his contract representatives, his contract negotiators, they are going to want to reach out and to potentially do this because last year they did, and it didn't go anywhere. So after Goff having a really good year, the rumor is that his contract negotiators, his representatives, they're going to reach out again, and there's more of a likelihood that something will get done at this point. C. Gerald says, if a top 5 O-line makes Goff a top 5 quarterback, and we're planning to have a top 5 O-line for the foreseeable future, Goff could be good. Very good point. Joseph Murdoch says he got fat with the Rams. He'll get an extension with the Lions. That's a pretty big bag. Well, we'll see what happens. Again, like I said, I'm pretty confident that the Lions will probably extend Jared Goff. The question is for how much. Will it have voidable years? How long will it be for? I'm expecting we're going to hear contract talks at some point in the near future, and we're going to probably hear about Goff and the Lions potentially working on a contract extension all the same. But with that having been said, I'm going to wrap the show up. I know it's a little bit early, but like I said, I have some other things that I need to take care of. With that having been said, I just want to thank you all for tuning in for another show of the New Era Lions with David Pyke. Obviously, I'm the host, David. I hope to be back next Saturday. Again, if something comes up where I can't do it at normal time, I'll either pass it along to Derek or I'll drop it on the channel in a post so that way you guys are kept appraised. But until that time, I just want to say God bless. Thank you all for watching the show. Hope to see you guys next week. And until next time, go Lions, baby.